Hey, and welcome to The Solid Verbal. Now would be a perfect time to consider subscribing. Yeah, that little subscribe button for year-round premium college football content. That's it. Here's the video. Enjoy. Subscribe.
Welcome back to The Solid Verbal. Boys and girls, my name is Ty Hildenbrand. That fine gentleman over there is always the incomparable Dan Rubenstein. We are both wearing hats today.
What an intro for an audio medium, yeah.
We're both wearing hats today. I've got Happy Valley on. You've got your collared shirt. You're feeling, I guess, more dapper than I am today. Sir, how are you?
I'm good, Ty. I'm really good. We are setting ourselves up now because we're recording this on Wednesday, December 14th. Essentially, this is a flurry of a week. You have the December to remember sound because maybe there are flurries falling from the sky where you're at right now. Thank you.
You just want to talk over it? This is your beat.
Yeah. No, it's a flurry of activity, right? So we have more coaches moving around. We've got more people entering and exiting the transfer portal. And of course, we have recruits taking last-minute visits with parents or whatever and making last-minute decisions ahead of the early signing day. Of course, some will be announcing early on in January at some all-star games or taking all their visits in January and signing in early February. But in terms of transactions, the wire, the Solid Verbal transaction wire.
By the way, we've never played it long enough that it got to this part.
Is there a flutie? Is that what's happening? It's a flute?
I think there's a flute. I was going to dim it out, but then I heard the flute, and I was like, wait a second.
I'm liking this.
Okay, so, continue. I'll dim it again.
A lot of teams putting the proverbial giant bow around some sort of prize in the next 7 days or so. So yeah, we'll do a recruiting episode, an early signing day episode next week. Yes, that's when it's Wednesday is the early signing day. And I think today, though, we want to lock in because it's all related, right? Everything is related. Everything is connected. Coaches and recruits and portal stuff. Everybody's waiting to see what falls where before making a decision. So I think we're going to talk portal quarterbacks today, and we're going to approach it as travel agents?
Travel agents, yeah. You ever worked with a travel agent?
I don't think so. Maybe my parents did way back when. I don't think I have.
Well, let me tell you, when I went on my honeymoon, we worked with a travel agent.
Okay.
Who came very highly recommended. And I was skeptical because I said, you can do this better. You don't need to work through anybody.
Right.
In this particular case, it was not anybody who charged a commission. It wasn't any more expensive to go through the travel agent. I don't know if they got commission on the back end or what the economics of it were. Mm-hmm. It was delightful.
Oh, good.
It was delightful. If I were going on a big trip, I would consider it again. They really knew what they were doing.
I trust people's expertise, I suppose,
right?
It
was delightful. It was a great experience.
Okay. Is this episode, as all of our episodes, brought to you by somebody?
This episode, all of our episodes, driven by our good friends over at Geico.
Okay, good.
So perhaps as quarterbacks are on the road,
some extra support there?
Consider what our friends over at Geico can offer you in terms of coverage.
If you're renting a car because you're coming out to L.A. to see our live show.
That's right. That's right. SolidVerbalLive.com is where you can go if you want to get in on the action. A little under a month, Dan, until the big show at the Troubadour. We have been touting this show.
Oh, yeah.
Not just for weeks now, truly for the last couple of years. We've never really talked about it publicly. We've wanted to do this show for a good long time. We have not been able to do so for a variety of factors that I do not need to go back into. We are doing the show now in a couple of weeks at the Troubadour. SolidVerbalLive.com is where you can go to get tickets if you're going to be in the LA area, if you can get to LA. If you are media, I know we have a lot of media folks who listen to this show. If you're media, if you're going to be in town for the national championship, this is Saturday, January the 7th. It is the Saturday evening before the national championship, which is played on Monday the 9th. Please come on out and see us. We'd love to shake your hand. We'd love to have you in attendance for our big show at the Troubadour.
Conceptually, I don't want to give too much away, but Ty has been nonstop in the lab working on, the best word to characterize it would be burlesque.
Here we go.
Burlesque is that we're building a giant champagne glass. If you've ever seen that, that Ty has decided that is going to be where he performs. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Dita Von Teese, Ty, but
yeah, a true inspiration. I can tell you, a true inspiration.
I've seen some of the practice cut-ups. Holy hell, is Ty more flexible than we all imagined. So
I've just been hammering the pecs in the lab, man.
Ty, it has been a revelation to watch what you're going to be doing on the LA stage.
SolidVerbalLive.com is where you can go for that. And last but certainly not least, you've still got a little bit of time left. PlayWinterWonders.com. It's our free bowl confidence pool. We did the big, long hour-and-a-half bowl preview episode that dropped on the feed yesterday. Go back and listen to that if you feel like you need help with your confidence picks. But again, it's free to play, free to enter, free to win. We'll give out prizes, the whole works here. PlayWinterWonders.com. Invite your friends, your family, anybody who likes college football. I know we have a lot of folks who, as I've said before, have written in, say, we do our own pool and that sort of thing. Just invite them all into ours. It's cool. Yeah. PlayWinterWonders.com will send you the instructions for how to join. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's just plain and simple. And, we'd love to have you in the pool with us.
Absolutely. In the pool, just as we transfer away from talking about Ty and the giant champagne glass on the Troubadour stage. All right. So you mentioned travel agents. So what we're going to do here today, obviously there are some educated guesses as to where some of the top transfer portal quarterbacks will end up based on intel and visits. We know if a quarterback is visiting a place that he is at least on some level considering that place as his next destination. So what Ty and I are going to do is perhaps agree with some of that intel and or visits, or suggest something completely out of the box. Like, I don't know, maybe you should think about UCLA. Maybe you should think about UCF. Maybe you should think about, becoming a Maine Black Bear. I don't know. So Ty, I don't know if you have a sound at the ready to sort of utilize our travel agency bona fides.
A lot of air travel involved here, Dan. We're living in the future now, as you know. And, if you're a guy on the East Coast does not necessarily mean that you got to stay on the East Coast. Certainly DJ U is a guy who's from the West Coast. My hunch is that there will be a lot of travel in his future. As he probably heads west. It seems like that would make sense to me, but we can talk through what we think makes the most sense here. There has been a flurry of activity in the transfer portal. Again, I do have this sound too, which we can always use.
Always nice.
Whenever we want to. But, some of the big names that we talked about, and, On3 has been, I think On3.com has been doing a good job of tracking not just the names in the portal, but they've got their own little rubric for figuring out NIL value, which I don't know if I really believe that, but it's an interesting data point that maybe we can reference here. But they've been doing a good job, as has 24/7. You can sort of pick and choose your own website of ranking the various quarterbacks that are currently in the transfer portal. I believe both at present have Devin Leary as the top quarterback in the portal, but your top five varies depending on where you look. Some folks have Grayson McCall pretty high, new entrant as of the 12th of December. Brennan Armstrong, obviously from Virginia, another name could be very, very interesting. DJ U in there as well. Spencer Sanders, another name that kind of surprised us when he jumped in the portal, but we can talk about where it makes sense for him. Phil Dracovic, for what it's worth, is pretty high on both lists, and I believe is committed to Pitt. So we know where he's headed, but there are a great number of other quarterbacks here. Hudson Card, you mentioned him earlier, where I think it's up to us, frankly, to play this game as travel agents and decide where it makes the most sense.
Correct. So, do you want to start with DJU just because you started with him?
I want to start with DJU. He's from California, right?
Southern California. Yeah, went to Bosco.
Bellflower, California. Yeah, went to Bosco. Has been at Clemson now. Obviously, the club level is open for business, and Cade Klubnik is going to be starting in that bowl game against Tennessee. So DJU saw the writing on the wall. He's going elsewhere. He was a 5-star coming into Clemson. He still obviously has a ton of talent and a ton of, I think, potential for any new suitor. He's a big kid. He's 6'5". He's big Cinco, right? He's 6'4", 250. So he's a big dude. Where do you think makes the most sense for him?
So it's a question of whether or not there's a couple of, we talked about this on an earlier show this week, whether or not he and his brother are a package deal, though it seems like his brother Mateo leaning towards Ohio State, which I don't think would be an appropriate destination given. I think they're about to flip Washington's quarterback commit as well, so their room is pretty stacked at the moment. We'll see what happens with next year's quarterback battle. So if you're talking about a West Coast footprint and somewhere where you can say, okay, given the coaching situation, given the geography, this makes sense for somebody to take advantage, turn things around, and fulfill upside. What about Arizona State with what Kenny Dillingham did for Bo Nix, who was not in an exact same situation because I think he had more big wins and more interesting potential given his ability in the open field as a runner. But certainly with the pressure at Clemson, the pressure at Auburn, unique to Bo Nix at Auburn, but expectations basically don't exist in year one for Kenny Dillingham and ASU. Has that Southern California, Southwest footprint, and can sort of get a good, clean, fresh start. Now, the downside of ASU at the moment is everything's new. He's not entering into a white glove situation where, as Bo Nix had a fully returning offensive line, a deep receiving core, good running backs, even with a new coach. So that's the difference. Also ASU under that sort of cloud of NCAA investigation. That to me is an interesting one. If we're going to go back to Southern California, of course, UCLA losing DTR, that's more white glove, but I don't think they necessarily have the receivers. But certainly Chip Kelly and the experience he has developing quarterbacks is kind of fascinating. What about you?
Kind of fascinating. I mean, he would be essentially going back home. Yeah. And that is something that appeals a lot, I think, to transfers. It's not the only thing. But what about Virginia?
Tony Elliott. To his old coordinator, yeah.
Going back to his old coordinator and Tony Elliott, I think Virginia is an interesting possibility for DJU. It's not too far from Clemson, same conference.
Right.
And
Brennan
he
Armstrong
obviously
in the
would
portal.
be he obviously would be the best quarterback on that roster, given Brennan Armstrong is also going elsewhere. It may also be a situation there of not knowing what the talent around him looks like. My hunch is if you're a guy like DJU, you want to try and elevate your pro prospects. So that's probably something that needs to be considered. The Virginia one stood out to me. I'm glad you mentioned ASU, and UCLA makes a lot of sense. The other thing I'll throw out there, and
please,
look, this isn't any great secret if you've listened to us on this show. Notre Dame is in the market for a transfer quarterback. I'm not saying DJU is the fit or should be the fit, but pretty much all of the names that we're going to list would have a fit in Notre Dame. All of them would be better than what they have. Now, maybe Tyler Buchner comes out in the bowl game and he blows people away. We didn't see that in the first game and a half of Buchner that we saw. He was clearly still growing and learning at that point. So perhaps there is some maturation that we'll see on that level that makes us feel a little less sense of urgency about taking in a transfer quarterback at Notre Dame. But all of these names that we're going to list are definitely better, in my opinion. Definitely better than what they have now. So would probably take all of them. Just don't know if DJU per se is a fit in South Bend, Indiana.
Do you think he's definitively a Power 5 quarterback?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's right. I mean, there are options. Obviously, when Sonny Dykes was at SMU, and SMU is still a destination with Rhett Lashley and his offensive background and the success they had this year. And Houston, of course, with what they were able to accomplish, and Houston making the move to the Big 12. So that's sort of an imminent, Cincinnati is, also in that category. I would imagine West Coast. Virginia just seems like there's so much room to improve on offense. And maybe some of that was because of quarterback, but I think Brennan Armstrong is a pretty good quarterback, and they just didn't have it last year under Tony Elliott. And so there is less proof of concept with a school like Virginia. Obviously, Virginia Tech just takes Kyron Drones, I think, from Baylor. Who was a former blue chip recruit at quarterback. And so, I would imagine DJU's looking to go probably a little bit farther west than the ACC. There's Florida, and Florida's been rumored, Spencer Sanders, they've been rumored to be looking around with Anthony Richardson going pro. But that's where I would probably land at this point. UCLA, ASU. I know Wazoo's in the market, but that might be a little bit small, a place for him. I think Cameron Ward is done eligibility-wise, right? Came in as a grad transfer and is looking to get drafted. So, I think in terms of system, that makes a lot of sense. Bo Baldwin, obviously, pass happy during his time at Eastern Washington. Couldn't really get it done at Cal as an offensive coordinator. Now the coordinator at ASU. So I guess those would be my travel recommendations at the moment. I'm trying to think if there's anything in the Big 12 that jumps out to me as like a quarterback away, which he needs his help. He needs help. But I think he's going to be in demand enough because people are tantalized enough by his size and ceiling that he should be entering into what like a UCLA situation seems ideal.
Okay. Let's move on. I want to talk about Brennan Armstrong.
Okay.
So we mentioned potentially the reunion between DJU and Tony Elliott.
Yeah.
At Virginia. Brennan Armstrong has been at Virginia for a good long time. Was there this year, didn't really suit his fancy, I guess.
Right.
kind of along the same lines of reuniting with a former coach, Robert Anae hired by NC State to be new offensive coordinator. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Brennan Armstrong, formerly coached by Robert Anae.
Mm-hmm.
What do we think about Brennan Armstrong, NC State?
Well, isn't the reason Devin Leary's leaving because he appears to have been supplanted by, was MJ Morris, the freshman, that he showed enough promise that Devin Leary had questions about whether or not he was still going to be a fit with NC State?
Sure.
So I don't know if that fully coalesces with the reality at NC State. But yeah, I think that's always worth watching. I saw Brennan Armstrong either is considering or has scheduled visits to both, I think it's Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And then what else? I think Oklahoma State is another one that he seems to be considering, which makes sense. I mean, in the market, obviously Oklahoma State, pass happy. Wisconsin, with the hire of Phil Longo, appears to be trending in a more pass happy direction, or a more wide open direction, which I think would benefit Brennan Armstrong and his abilities, both as a thrower and runner. I don't know. I'm
another interesting one. And I can only assume that Tanner Morgan will be back for year 15 at Minnesota. But Brennan Armstrong originally committed to Minnesota out of high school.
Sure.
So, whether or not that carries any sway all these years later.
Chris Ottman-Bell coming back for year 7, I think, right?
Chris Ottman-Bell. I mean, let's just get the band of vets back together here. I don't know if that carries any sway, but could be an interesting fit.
Yeah. I think Minnesota's certainly interesting. Obviously, with the return to our guy, I don't know if you still have the sound at the ready, Kirk Shiraka.
I can find it, yeah.
The offense, when healthy, looks a little bit more like what PJ Fleck would have it look like. No, that's interesting. A lot of RPO stuff. Otherwise, a destination. I don't know if it's necessarily right for Brennan Armstrong. I know I lean West Coast, but Oregon State is a quarterback away from being legit good.
You think?
I think absolutely they are. I think Jonathan Smith is a very, very good offensive mind, and they've been beat up at quarterback, and they've had, I think, mediocre talent at quarterback, but they still win a bunch of games. So if they actually got a guy in there, had JT Daniels gone there instead of West Virginia and or Georgia, they'd be really legit, because they seem to pick up good receiver transfers. They develop tight ends. They develop offense. That, if we're going to talk about plug and play, that's low key. And I don't know who that's for, right? I don't know if that's for Luke Altmaier or somebody like that, but they are a B-plus quarterback away from beating a lot of teams.
Where do you want to go next? Do you want to talk about Hudson Card? Do you want to talk about Grayson McCall? How you feeling?
Hudson Card appears to be destined for TCU.
TCU makes sense.
Is there could you make the Notre Dame case over TCU?
I mean, I don't think from Hudson Card's standpoint. Hudson Card is from Texas. And again, I do think that factors in when these guys are transferring. It also factors in that Max Duggan had a resurgence under Sonny Dykes.
Of course.
And, if you're a quarterback, you want to play in a pass-happy system. You want to play in a quarterback that can get you to the league. The fact that Max Duggan will be considered as an NFL prospect, I think is proof positive that quarterbacks should at least consider TCU, because Max Duggan was anything but going into the season. He wasn't even the starter, right? So to that end, yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense for Hudson Card. Hudson Card was rumored to Notre Dame for a bit. It was a minute where folks were talking that Hudson Card could be an option there. I no longer believe that to be the case. So my hunch is that the TCU thing is done and dusted.
My question now, if we're going to stick on Notre Dame-ish, who appears to be definitively in the market, and Devin Leary doesn't appear to be interested in Notre Dame, is that the word?
It is wavered back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah. At first it was, then it wasn't. Now maybe it's back on. I am not privy to any insider info on that. I wish I were, but just following along like everybody else, it seems as if that has kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit.
I would be happy with Spencer Sanders going to Florida. What about Spencer Sanders in South Bend?
No, please no.
No?
Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me.
He would be 10 times the quarterback of Drew Pine.
Don't do that to me.
If he heals up It's an interesting situation in the same way, Bo Nix plays against Oregon early on, I think his first game of his career, and then comes full circle. You got the bowl game last year with Spencer Sanders. Here's the other thing with Spencer Sanders. If we're going to be
doing the
travel agents.
Spencer Sanders one now? Do I have to play this for Spencer Sanders?
Spencer Sanders was recruited by an offensive coordinator who's now an offensive coordinator elsewhere, who could be argued is a quarterback away and is, white glove in the way that an offensive line has improved, that there's weapons at running back and receiver. Do you know who I'm referring to?
Go on.
Mike Yurcich at Penn State.
Yeah. I don't think he's getting the nod. I mean, presumably Spencer Sanders wants to go somewhere where he's going to play right away, and he's not going to play over Drew Aller. They're not going to play him over, because he's not better than Drew Aller.
How do you know?
I've seen 4 years of Spencer Sanders, and I'm willing to roll the dice on Drew Aller.
So you don't know. You've seen Drew Aller throw 0 significant throws, right?
I would rather grow and struggle a bit with Drew Aller, knowing that year 3 of him on campus probably has more upside than I would be bringing in Spencer Sanders and starting him, because he feels to me like a once in a 10-year quarterback, that type of prospect. Whereas if you bring Spencer Sanders in and you play him, Drew Aller's going elsewhere.
I love that you think no matter what, Drew Aller is going to be there for 3 years, as if we're not living in a portal era in which anybody is gone at any moment.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Fair point. But I don't want him at Notre Dame. I don't want him at Penn State.
Wow.
No.
Is there a quarterback on this list where you'd be willing to risk Drew Aller for something that is a more surefire success?
A quarterback on this list.
That's a quarterback on this list. Or even we keep saying TVD, and I don't know what's going on there, but because things are not great. Would you take TVD, a healthy TVD, over Drew Aller?
I think I want to stick with Drew Aller, man.
I
think I want to stick with Drew Aller. I don't see the need to upset the apple cart and push him elsewhere, because there's a pretty good chance if he goes in the portal, he's one of the top 3 names that we're talking about here. So I think he's that caliber quarterback. I wish they would have played him this year.
So where would you go? Spencer Sanders, travel agent. You going to Florida?
I think Florida's interesting. What about Tennessee?
Man, Tennessee is a great destination for anybody, but they've got a situation next year where it seems like there's going to be a bridge from somebody to Nico.
Right.
Right? Whether it's 5 or 6 weeks in, that there is, given the amount of money reportedly being thrown in his direction, and rightfully so, there seems like there is going to be pressure to have somebody like, is Tyrod Taylor, is he going to come to Tennessee for 5 games and then hand the job off? It's going to be that situation. So Tennessee is interesting because that is a plug and play situation because of that offense. But I don't know. I think that is even more of I think teams would much rather have Nico just because they haven't seen anything than Drew Aller at this point, because at least you've seen a little bit from Aller and you don't know. Okay. Tennessee I don't hate, but I think Florida seems more realistic at this point. Anywhere else for Spencer Sanders? Like a fresh start in Nebraska? Who's looking at Jeff Sims?
I'm glad you brought up Nebraska. I think Nebraska is another interesting destination for some of these guys. Now I know they've already been working on that front, so
right.
It may not be quite as open, but again, Spencer Sanders is somebody who's got a lot of experience, a lot of game experience in their programs that I think would sign up for that. The Florida one to me seems like it makes the most sense.
I would go to UCLA if I were Spencer Sanders. That's what I would do as a dual threat guy for playing for Chip. That's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, he's not unlike DTR.
No. Absolutely not. Where the numbers appear to pop, but then you watch them in a big game and you're like, oh, man.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly.
What about A&M, somebody asked, for Spencer Sanders?
A&M?
Again, the floor is much higher.
Yeah.
But then you lose Connor Wegman.
And I was going to say, it's not unlike the situation at Penn State.
Yeah.
Right? Where you've got this promising young talent that you're into and that the fan base is into.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to that end, in this portal era, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to build depth. If you're Spencer Sanders, I don't think you want to go somewhere and be a backup. That's not why you're transferring. You want to go somewhere and be a starter. You want to get a fresh start and hopefully jumpstart things a little bit more in terms of pro prospects, right? So I don't think he's going anywhere to be a backup. But there's definitely room to be a backup on many a program that are losing their backup quarterbacks or losing their starting quarterbacks. So we'll see how this all kind of works out after these guys sign on with different places. But and just another aspect of this whole thing to consider.
What about Georgia for any of these guys? I know they've got guys that have been waiting in the wings for a while, but when you recruit and have the expectations that Georgia has, I wonder. Right? There was a reason they brought in Jamie Newman and JT Daniels, right? That they didn't feel great about the depth they had at quarterback. Now, these guys are older and more seasoned, but they have not been a team unafraid to dip their toes into the portal waters.
Yeah.
What about any of these guys as a missing piece to take over for Stetson Bennett? And the reason I bring this up with Spencer Sanders, too, is sometimes situations dictate things. Like, if you ask me about Spencer Sanders in Oregon, if Bo Nix declared for the draft and Oregon has a 5-star quarterback allegedly coming in, and if Spencer Sanders were the 1-year bridge behind what should be an at least okay, but they lose some key pieces, offensive line, but good skill talent around him and a more stable place, I wouldn't hate it, honestly. After what Bo Nix was able to do thriving in Eugene, I wouldn't hate it.
See, it probably makes sense more on the Oregon side, let's say, than on the Georgia side. Because the Georgia offense, as we've come to know it these last couple of years, is just super efficient. It is super efficient. It minimizes risk, and it relies on its running game. Mm-hmm. So maybe Spencer Sanders isn't that kind of quarterback. He hasn't been that kind of quarterback where they've asked him to throw it 50 times a game.
Right.
In a situation where he's throwing it 25 times a game, does that make him more efficient? I don't know. I wouldn't want to take that risk. If you're Georgia, I don't think you have to.
Okay. I mean, I know Georgia has their own succession plan, and they're not rumored to be a player for any of these guys, at least at the moment from what I've seen. But I think there's a ton of upside with him. How far away was he from leading Oklahoma State to a Big 12 championship?
Not far.
18 inches?
Yeah. It was not far.
So I think good Spencer Sanders, you can talk about him in the same way as you can talk about Bo Nix. That's all I'm saying.
My judgment here is shaded by the fact that I'm just not a Spencer Sanders fan.
That's fine.
Right. Nothing against him personally, but as the quarterback of my team, I don't want him. Somebody else can have him. I think the skill set would fit somewhat at Florida. And I think the Florida one is the one that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
That's not to say that there aren't better quarterbacks out there. I think there are, but I just like the UCLA connection, the Florida connection, that those two to me seem like they would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and he'd be a bridge to, I think it's Jaden Rashada, the 5-star, 4-star, whatever, coming in from California to Gainesville.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Next name. I saw Grayson McCall visited Auburn. Is there somewhere that fits? You're like, no-brainer for Grayson McCall. Dual threat.
Yeah.
A lot of experience, accurate, winning.
Would love to have him at Notre Dame. Willing to have him at Notre Dame.
You're willing to have him at Notre Dame. Okay.
Yeah, we're willing to host him.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen a couple programs in addition to Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Liberty connection with Jamie Chadwell, former coach, now taking the Liberty job.
He can do way better. But yeah.
I believe he can do better. I agree. I don't think he has to go to Liberty. I think there are going to be plenty of programs that are interested in Grayson McCall. He's a pro prospect.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen NC State's name as well in there.
Okay.
I don't know if that worked. I believe in that Brennan Armstrong, Robert and I connection.
Mm-hmm.
So my hunch is that he's going to be the guy at NC State, if not MJ Morris. But the Auburn one's interesting. The Auburn one is interesting to me, and I think that would make a lot of sense. If you're Grayson McCall, you sort of know what you're signing up for, right? You know the system that you'd be walking into with Hugh Freeze. And so as a quarterback, I would think that'd be pretty appealing. He's already put guys in the NFL, right? Like from Grayson McCall's standpoint, that would seemingly make a lot of sense.
Yeah, the problem with Auburn, because Auburn would be an incredible stage in the SEC West for him to fully showcase his abilities, is what does that offensive roster look like around him? Offensive line struggled. Guys were not running backs were very good this past year. But at receiver, just inconsistency. Like, are you signing up as a white glove type quarterback for a full rebuild? Now, it's much quicker to rebuild right now when you can bring in transfers everywhere. But I still think it's an issue. And so that to me is why I understand why he's looking at Auburn. Is there anywhere else where it's just, like, would you take Grayson McCall over Drew Aller?
No.
Okay. Oh my God, I love hearing this. That you're just so fully in.
I'm in. Look, I'm biased, but I'm in. I'm fully in.
I wish I could point to Miami, but I just can't do that to any quarterback.
Yeah, we don't know what's going on with Miami. The other name that came up for for Grayson McCall, I keep getting these guys confused. I apologize. UCLA, even though there's no obvious connection at UCLA, obviously he's a dual threat guy, and he's been very successful for Coastal. You could see Chip having a field day with someone of that skill set. I've seen Oregon State mentioned a couple times now. Again, no obvious connection.
For Grayson McCall?
It's a stretch for me, but I've seen that program listed, which is good.
Yeah.
Right? Good for Jonathan Smith. They are going to be active in hopefully bringing in a quarterback. I've seen Florida. Florida to me would make a lot of sense as well.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of those, I haven't seen much else.
What about what is the Sam Hartman situation? Is he back? Is Wake looking?
I don't know.
You can Google it real quick as we talk. That's interesting. Just speaking of quarterback-friendly systems. Otherwise, for Grayson McCall, as you look across the landscape, you look at the Big 12, not Texas. Texas Tech is a little bit interesting. That they're certainly going to be quarterback-friendly with that system, the Kitley offensive system. That they could go after somebody big if they're not huge believers in what they have right now, long term. Elsewhere in the Big 12, not Baylor. Not Kansas yet. I don't think they're going to be a full destination quite yet. Got to see how that roster continues to build under Lance Leipold. Kansas State is spoken for. Man, there's not a lot of white glove situations right now. Again, take him at Oregon, of course. If Bo Nix declares.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Another school that seems like they're in the market, though there are some obvious roadblocks for especially people like me. New coach Troy Taylor in Stanford. Now, roadblocks being academics, of course, but runs a fun system, obviously had a good amount of success developing offense. If you remember, I think it was Tyler Huntley was the stud at Utah when he was there, or at least part of his time there. Stanford is interesting, right? Because if you can get into Stanford, you go to Stanford. They're going to run a more fun offense than what they've been running, but they lost a ton to transfer. And so that is a rebuild, and that's a more difficult rebuild. I'm not going to recommend anybody go to Northwestern.
No. Oh, God, don't do that. Don't do that.
Iowa somehow already pulled a guy.
Yeah.
What about Iowa State? Now, they move on from their offensive coordinator, and I believe they have a top recruit coming in. I believe. You can fact check me as well there. But that's sort of a buy low situation where you'll probably have a pretty good defense. They've actually targeted, and you look at how they've targeted offensive skill talent with a few good receivers. Obviously, Breece Hall recently at running back.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that it's a big place, not a traditional transfer destination, it seems. But I might be willing to take a flyer from one of these guys on the Clones. Won a bunch of games. Won a Fiesta Bowl a couple years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
And now
I don't hate
you've got the NFL MVP as an alum in Brock Purdy. So I don't hate it.
All right. So look, let's stick to the script here. If we can.
Sorry, I'm way off.
No, I mean listen, we're travel agents. We're just putting ideas out there.
True.
Let's bring this thing back, okay?
Let's.
I saw that Drew Pine visited BYU. I don't see Drew Pine as a Power 5 guy.
Okay. Well, he would be at BYU.
He would be at BYU.
Yeah.
I just, if you're a BYU fan, you don't want that. Please don't do that. But that being said, some other names here on this list that I think are interesting. I think we've covered a lot of the big ones. We haven't really talked much about Devin Leary.
Let's talk about Devin. He's from New Jersey, sort of by Philly, right?
From New Jersey, Devin Leary.
Yeah.
So the Devin Leary name, I think, is one that has been bounced around a couple different ways. Obviously, the Notre Dame thing, I think there is definite interest.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly on behalf of Notre Dame. I don't know where Devin Leary is at. I have seen Auburn. I have seen Florida. I have seen pretty much every big school because he's Devin Leary and because many folks think he's a top quarterback in the portal.
Right.
So based on that, kid can go wherever he wants. outsider perspective, not somebody who's a Notre Dame fan, what situation do you think makes sense for a guy like Devin Leary?
Oh, man. I just looked it up. Sam Hartman, I think, is going to be eligible for the draft.
I think he's going to go pro, yeah.
Yeah. I don't hate Wake. I don't hate either Wisconsin or Nebraska, where everybody's getting a fresh start, and you already know the system, or what the system-ish will be in play, which is pretty balanced and pretty dynamic at Wisconsin under Phil Longo. It's a talent thing, right, in terms of finding proven receivers in the way that North Carolina was able to find and develop those guys. Nebraska's interesting to me if I'm Devin Leary and getting that new start, but it's pretty far away from New Jersey, pretty far away from the ACC footprint. So I would look at Wake. Virginia, I would have questions about, but any of those schools to me, I would recommend for Devin Leary. Notre Dame's a no-brainer at the same time. Now, how long do you get Tommy Rees? I don't know. If he is as hot shot as everybody seems to say he is, who knows? Maybe he could be on the move after a year. But Devin Leary only has, I think, a year. So I'd go Devin Leary at Notre Dame. I'd go Devin Leary. How about this? What about Michigan State? That is not a name we've brought up.
I have odds in front of me that have been listed for Devin Leary.
Oh, please tell me.
The current favorite is Illinois.
I don't hate that.
Illinois is... I mean, that would be a coup for Illinois.
Yeah.
That would be a coup for Illinois to land somebody like this. The connection is that his brother, Donovan Leary, signed on with Illinois. He's going to be a true freshman next fall. So the chance to compete against that schedule in the Big Ten West, maybe we're getting rid of divisions, but it's still the same teams. The chance to compete in the Big Ten, I think, would be very interesting for Devin Leary. The second implied favorite here would be Notre Dame. Notre Dame would be next up, followed by, I've got Alabama, Missouri, Georgia, Florida, and then others. So a lot of teams interested in this. The Notre Dame connection makes a ton of sense. Makes an absolute ton of sense. Maybe he doesn't have his brother going there, but Notre Dame needs a quarterback. He obviously would get a chance to play in a pretty big stage. Clearly playing for, a Tommy Rees offense, which, we could talk about here until we're blue in the face, but a lot of folks around college football still really respect Rees, really respect what he did this season. Think he did a good job bringing things back on track on the offensive side. I've come full circle on it, and I'm back to being a believer in Tommy Rees.
Right.
Though I did have my moments this season with how he game planned for Drew Pine. I think that makes a lot of sense. I hope that's the one that Notre Dame decides to select, that he decides he wants to go to Notre Dame. But again, I'm biased. I've been on the delirious fan train here since about week 8.
Illinois' 2023 schedule, by the way. If you're looking at schedules that will be kind to your continued development, Toledo, at Kansas, Penn State, FAU. So 3 of the 4 non-conference. And Penn State is in Champaign. At Purdue, new coach. Nebraska, new coach. At Maryland, who knows? Wisconsin, at home, new coach. Bye week before at Minnesota, new full-time starting quarterback. Indiana, probably bad. At Iowa, new quarterback, could also be bad again overall on offense. And Northwestern.
The schedule, the brother, those things I think make a lot of sense.
No Michigan, no Ohio State.
The question that I would have is this a good system for my development
as
an NFL talent? Because Brett Bielema likes to run the ball 40 times, 50 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's the style. Chase Brown had a great year because of that system. Now, if you've got a quarterback that's a little bit more capable, does it look different? Perhaps. But I don't know if that's something that you could bank on if you're Devin Leary, who presumably wants to go pro after next season.
What about Oklahoma State?
I don't know. You got to compete with Garrett Rangel, whatever it's called.
A young Gundy, yeah. No, I think Oklahoma State is actively looking right now. Next quarterback?
Next quarterback. How do you feel about a guy like a Keaton Slovis?
If I'm Keaton Slovis, I just pick the warmest place closest to. I think he's from Arizona, right? Kurt Warner was his high school coordinator or offensive or head coach or something in Arizona. I mean, that's another ASU. That's another, a G5 place, somewhere warm. Like, just play out the final year of your eligibility somewhere pleasant.
Yeah, I mean, who else do we got here? I saw Cade McNamara was running his mouth a little bit about Florida, or excuse me, I'm getting all my programs mixed up here as I look at the list, about Iowa. Quote, please just keep saying it's the...
Oh, I saw that.
blankiest offense in college football. Please think that we are going to be so blanky next year. Please. No problem here, Cade. None.
Do you
no
think
problem.
he's saying that because during his recruiting trip, this, by the way, is 100% accurate. During his recruiting trip, Brian Ferentz had cut-ups of Spencer Petras. I'm making this up, but it's also accurate. Had cut-ups of the Iowa offense ready and said, look, here are all of the easy missed throws that would have resulted in first downs and chunk plays that Iowa left on the table. And we had beat up receivers and, goes through it and shows the evidence that, like, we think you can make all these throws. It's nothing. It's nothing. You got to come out here. This is ABC. So I think that's absolutely what happened and what is giving Cade McNamara, rightfully so, I'm not criticizing, the confidence to say, I'm going to make some of those throws next year.
Yeah. Hank Bachmeier is interesting to me.
Yeah, he might not be good.
I don't know if he's good.
Yeah.
That's a problem. A lot of short stuff, right?
Yeah.
But would be curious to see if he's the kind of guy that would appeal to like an Oregon State. Given connection
an upgrade?
To the West Coast.
Yeah, I don't know.
think he's better than Ben Gulbranson.
Yeah. About Fresno for any of these guys like Keaton Slovis.
Fresno.
Like Jeff Tedford's a quarterback whisperer.
Yeah.
At least is sometimes.
Yeah.
Fresno seems like a good destination. They develop receivers. They're able to get transfers from guys who were, bigger prospects in California coming back home in the same way that, Oregon State's able to get West Coast transfers back to the West Coast after they've been somewhere else. Fresno seems like a great destination.
There are a lot of great destinations. I think what we're talking about when we bring up Keaton Slovis, certainly when we bring up a guy like a Hank Bachmeier, these are guys who have played in systems where they're asked to throw a lot of short stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of short stuff. Right. And Keaton Slovis played in kind of an air raidy system, right? We've also had the Hank Bachmeier experience, which again is a lot of short stuff. So I'd be curious to see what an interesting landing spot would be for those guys. One program that we have not mentioned at all.
I'm ready.
If we are travel agents, Kentucky is interesting.
Oh, Liam Cohen? Yeah.
Kentucky is interesting because Liam Cohen's stock soared after 1 year at Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Will Levis thing obviously has perpetuated on now into now the off season where folks still have him as a top 10 pick. I don't get it. At some point, maybe we'll bring,
They still do?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe we'll bring Nate Tice back on the show and we can see
Sure.
if he's changed his tune at all in the off season as we get closer to the draft.
Yeah.
I still don't get it, but the Liam Cohen thing, at least for 1 year, boosted both of their stock enough that, we're still talking about these guys as the next great thing. So if you are a quarterback, if you're looking at Kentucky, if you're knowing that Liam Cohen is going
Luke
back there.
Altmaier action to Kentucky?
I'm just saying, keep Kentucky in the back of your mind as a possible destination for any of these guys.
A little buy low action from a backup who couldn't crack it. By the way, recently discovered that Luke Altmaier and Logan Smothers are two entirely different people. Why isn't anybody telling me these things? Yeah, I don't hate that for Kentucky. Kentucky is a program that it seems to be on stable ground, and bringing back Liam Cohen only helps that. They've developed young receivers recently. The defense has been consistently a threat. Not every game, but a threat, I would say. They develop NFL caliber talent. You can win a bunch of games at Kentucky. I don't hate that suggestion.
In our chat here, Graham Mertz has been apparently gotten he's gotten a little bit of steam here with Kentucky, so we'll see if
you got to see something. And I look at the way that we thought about Will Levis coming out of Penn State and going to Kentucky. You're like, oof, good luck, and proved a lot of people wrong with Liam Cohen anyway.
Look, Will Levis has had a resurgence.
Yeah.
And I think him being put in a situation to showcase what he can do as a thrower has been a great story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not rooting against Will Levis. I just don't think he's a top 10 pick.
Right.
I don't think he's a top. I think if you throw for 98 yards or whatever it was against Vandy, that should be something of a disqualifier.
Right. Dude, that's
I've
Clark
been wrong
Lee,
before.
man. You don't
I've
just
been wrong
walk
before, many times
into
before.
Nashville.
But
I know.
We're going to have to bring somebody on at some point to tell us why they still feel that way, because I don't see it. But I'm also not a scout.
Can I give you, is there any school where it's just assumed that they have their guy, but you're not sold? I know I'm putting you on the spot with this question. Like, here's a question to me. Like, if you're Baylor, are you positive you've got your guy?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think you should be positive because
I'd kick some tires.
This was supposed to be, the coming out party for Blake Shapen.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, there was turnover there.
Of course.
And granted, there was plenty of reason to believe that this would be something of a down year for Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of Baylor fans will tell you explicitly that they were disappointed by Shapen, that left a lot to be desired. And though the upside is still you can see that there's upside there, that there was a lot of meat on the bone.
Somebody in the chat, Mr. Pizza Coley, Ole Miss, another good suggestion.
Yeah.
Are you positive they've got their guy?
I like Jackson Dart.
I like him. I don't know if I love him, especially given what we've seen from Lane Kiffin quarterbacks. I don't know.
This is why I love the portal, man. I love the portal. This is my favorite time of year. I love the portal. It's my new favorite thing, and I wish more people would get on board with me.
Yeah.
Get on board. Can we make shirts like all aboard the portal train or something? I don't know. Like, you're more creative about this than I am, but
right.
I want portal shirts to celebrate the transfer portal because I honestly believe that this is, once more people kind of get over themselves and realize how much fun and how ridiculous this is going to be moving forward. It may not be this ridiculous after, we get through the whole COVID thing, but
right.
I still believe moving forward, this is going to be one of the crown jewels of college football that makes it feel like NBA free agency and baseball free agency and everything rolled into one. Because again, no one's running it. No one's running it. It will be all speculation, complete rumors, 24/7. And I love it. I love everything about it.
My only qualm, my only concern, my only worry, because I like the ability for players to have more freedom, is that from a fan perspective, that it is more difficult to lock in on a favorite player, right? That you're going to be more inclined to say, I'm a North Carolina fan, I'm a Illinois fan, I'm a UCLA fan, more than you are a fan of a quarterback. Because you grew up as a Notre Dame fan, but you didn't just grow up as a Notre Dame fan. You grew up as a Ron Powlus fan, as a Jerome Bettis fan, whoever, because like those were your guys. You saw them progress over your years at their years at your school. It's more difficult to do that. Like, as an Oregon fan, I don't feel for Bo Nix, who might be the best modern quarterback Oregon's ever had given this season. I don't feel the same way about him as I felt about Darren Thomas or Marcus Mariota or Joey Harrington, right? That you grow with them. And so that's the thing that I'm like, well, you lose a little bit of that, and that's a bummer as a fan. That concerns me a little bit.
This is where some of the pro sports leagues have one up on college football.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you can play fantasy sports to a different degree. I mean, I know we have plenty of great options with fantasy college football and whatnot. There's just too many teams, and that makes it hard. But there are plenty of people who follow those sports just from a fantasy perspective, and guys moving teams is something that can be celebrated in a way that it isn't as much on the college level. So like, we could cover this from 1,000 different directions. I expect that we will continue to do so. We're going to have to do so in this new world of college football as guys continue to move on. But I love it. I'm all about it. Maybe that's because my team needs a quarterback desperately.
Yes.
But it'll be so interesting to see where these guys end up going. So here's what I'm going to do.
Please.
To put a bow on this, December to remember style, I'm going to keep it playing, okay?
Please.
It's really low. I'm going to go through. I'm going to give you each name. And you tell me where you want them to go as a travel agent here.
Okay.
Devin Leary.
Wisconsin.
Oh, come on.
What? I want stability there. They haven't had it in a while.
Brennan Armstrong.
Nebraska.
DJ U.
UCLA.
There's the flute.
There it is.
Grayson McCall.
Notre Dame.
I mean,
yeah.
I love you.
No problem.
Spencer Sanders.
Florida.
Hudson Card. We said TCU.
TCU.
Right? Graham Mertz. Next topic. Drew
Illinois.
Pine. Drew Pine.
Penn State.
This really does go high here. If
Yeah, no, it does.
We've never let it play this long.
Yeah.
All right.
You're
Final
not
one.
even going to
here.
react to me saying Drew Pine, Penn State? Okay.
I just don't. I was kind of saying that.
Troy.
In jest.
I don't know.
Troy. All right. Final one here. We will throw out
Jeff Sims?
Jeff Sims apparently is going to Nebraska.
Oh, okay.
Last one here that we'll throw out is Hank Bachmeier.
Fresno.
All right. So look, let us know. solidverbal@gmail.com. Let us know across social media. Let us know in Patreon. We've got a bunch of folks who are listening right now on verballers.com or commenting along as we go here. Let us know if you're the travel agent, which of these situations makes the most sense.
Yes.
The rumors will persist. Obviously, a lot of this will not be set in stone for a good long time, but we will revisit as needed. That's what we do on the show. We will be coming your way twice a week starting next week, right?
Correct. Yes.
Twice a week starting next week. Obviously, there aren't games now to discuss, not on a weekly basis anyway, but as we get into bowl season, we're going to be previewing some of the biggest games. We'll be talking a little bit more about point spreads and schemes and matchups and styles making fights and all the normal stuff that we talk about here on the show.
Your CARE acronym.
That's right, the CARE acronym, which you and I had a bit of a dispute over. I think we've settled that, right?
We're locked in. Yeah.
We've locked in now. We're going with CARE.
CARE is crap, don't pick them if you're figuring out which team cares more.
If they've been crap down the stretch, don't pick them.
Crap down the stretch, don't pick them.
Yeah.
About to be a new team, which means decimated by opt-outs, injuries, coach losses, etc. That's the A. About. R, real scary, picking interim coach in a spot where they're thrust into a position of absolute leadership. And then E, and trust your gut, or end of day, trust your gut.
End of day, trust your gut. The solid verbal cares. C.A.R.E.
Yeah.
We could do two shirts here, the transfer portal and the solid verbal cares.
I love it.
Dan, enjoy your week. Enjoy your weekend. For those who are listening, we've got our final Spotify live show this evening. If you're listening to this on a Thursday, our last one, we're going to make it count. The only place you can hear it is on Spotify. We're not even going to put it on the feed. It's going to be like a secret thing, Easter egg for solid verballers, right?
Yes.
Come on out. solidverbal.com/Spotify is where you can get the link. 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, Thursday evening. Also, solidverballive.com. As always, that's where you can go to get the tickets for the LA show. It's the last show of this season. We're pumped. We're hyped. We're ready. It's at the Troubadour, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, of course, on January the 7th. And last but not least, I've said that a couple times now, but make sure you hit follow. Make sure you hit subscribe. Whatever your app says, we'd love to have you aboard here. We're going to continue going all throughout the offseason, certainly as we get through bowl season, as we get to the championship, and all things that come afterwards. College football is a year-round thing these days. So we'll be here all throughout the offseason, Dan.
Listen and subscribe to Extra Nuggets, new podcasts with me and Adam Amin, the legend Adam Amin. Extra
growing
Nuggets.
like a weed, man. It is growing like a weed. People are jumping aboard.
I know. It's really fun.
We're super thrilled.
Extra Nuggets. That's it.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein. For myself, Ty Hildenbrand, thanks for downloading, for listening, for playing along at home. Hope you're all doing well. Enjoy your weekend. Until next time, stay solid.
Peace.